So this is actually, I wanted to say something before we start looking at this sheet about the 8 worldly concerns. I had an interesting conversation with some of the monks today, in particular Most Venerable Vin Li at lunch. And he asked me, whenever I had the opportunity in the future to mention what we talked about. So I thought I would take the opportunity now. I don't remember how we got on the subject, but at lunch today we were talking about how when people were escaping from Vietnam as refugees, and they would go to the refugee camps in the Philippines and elsewhere, there were Western, probably largely Western aid workers who would go in and say, oh, well, you can't go to America, you can't go to Australia unless you convert and become Christian. Have you heard stories like this? No? Even, I guess at the camp that Most Venerable Vin Li was at, that happened, and he was really confused about that.
What years?
I don't know. I don't know what years we're talking about. This is back in the 70s.
I think 79 and 80, 78, 79, 80, because I live in Hong Kong camp.
And you heard that?
At that time, yeah. Someday, I don't know, they announced this, you can go to America, something happened, and you have to have the people sponsor. Family sponsor.
Oh, okay. So the issue was family sponsorship. Yeah. 78, 89, 78, 79, 80.
Yeah,
okay. And so, yeah. But then I mentioned how, we have a number of people in the chaplaincy program at UWest who are either in the military or going into the military. And I said that one of them mentioned how when American service members, when they're signing up to join the Army, the Navy, the Air Force or whatever, in their paperwork there's a code, like a number, that corresponds to their religion. So Christian, whatever, and there's one for no religion. Well, apparently there are a number of people who've gone in to sign up for the military who were Buddhist, and they were told there's no code for Buddhists.
No code of,
which isn't true. Yeah. There is a code for Buddhists. And so there are Buddhists in the military. So the military thinks there are only about 6,000 Buddhists in the military, the American military. But there are apparently some number of Buddhists running around in the military who actually, on their paperwork, it says no religion. Because they were told when they went to fill out the paperwork, and I think this was sometimes civilian volunteers who are helping with this, and I think they fill this part of the paperwork out after they've signed up when they go to the base or something like that. I'm not sure of the details. But apparently they're told, no, you can't sign up, you can't put Buddhist to be in the American military, which isn't true. And then he told me about a situation where recently a couple of little girls, Vietnamese girls, I don't know if they were born here or born in Vietnam, but at their public school, their teacher told them, God is up here and Buddha is down here. Like God is great and Buddha is nothing. Their teacher at a public school. Now, if it happened in a classroom, it's bad enough if it happened like in the hallway or at lunch or something, but if it happened in the classroom, from my understanding, that's illegal. Teachers in public schools cannot push their religion on their students. And then I said, and so we're trading stories back and forth. Well, I had a friend, I think I've mentioned him before. He's an American monk in the Tibetan tradition, and he was in Mongolia off and on over the course of a few years, helping to revive Buddhism in Mongolia. And he ran into Christian missionaries there who were apparently telling the Mongolian people, your country, the economy in your country is a mess because of Buddhism. So if you convert to Christianity, then everything will be wonderful. So both of us, several of us, my friends at school, my Buddhist friends at school, we've run into things like this again and again and again. And I said, I don't understand why people think it's okay to lie and manipulate or take advantage of refugees in a desperate situation in order to gain converts. They're acting against their own supposed religious beliefs. So I would encourage you, if you ever run into something like this or hear something like this, stand up and say it's wrong. This is wrong. I don't mean to pick on Christians, because I'm sure there are people in other religions who do it. There may even be instances where Buddhists of one sect tell Buddhists of another sect, oh, well, I won't help you unless you join my faith or something. That may happen. I've never heard of a case like that. but it may happen. So we don't want to just pick on Christians. But if you ever hear of this happening, stand up and say that it's wrong. Because otherwise, then it filters down, say, among people wanting to join the military. Even other Buddhist service members might not know that there is a code for Buddhism. And they might tell their friends who want to join, oh, but you can't say that you're Buddhist when you join the military. So mistakes get perpetuated that way too. So stand up and speak out about it. So Most Venerable Vinley asked me to mention that to you today.
Can I share my experience?
Yes. Well, actually, maybe can we wait until the question and answer period? Why don't we do that and you'll go first? Okay, thank you. So let's take a look at the outline today. Or it's not really an outline, it's just some notes that I made on the 8 worldly concerns. So, pleasure and suffering, praise and blame, fame and obscurity or disgrace. I've seen this explained either way. Obscurity is the opposite of fame, but disgrace, you can also be famous, but negatively famous, right? That'd be more what disgrace is. And then gain and loss. So these are the 8 worldly concerns. These 8 things that we waste our time on and that lead us to all kinds of suffering. So pleasure and suffering, this is maybe not the best way to word it actually. I thought about this later after I typed this up. I've seen different versions of this. Some say getting what we want and getting what we don't want. But really when we think about it, when we look at when I think about the teachings that I've received on this, pleasure and suffering, we're really talking about chasing after or being preoccupied with getting pleasurable circumstances, good circumstances, sensory pleasures, pleasant smells, pleasant tastes, a cushy job. We don't have to work a whole lot, but we get paid a whole lot or something. This is what we're talking about in this case. So pleasurable circumstances, okay, pleasurable experiences and circumstances. And so then suffering here isn't just suffering, we're trying to avoid, or we have to experience, or being concerned about having to experience unpleasant things. Bad smells, bad tastes, boring, frustrating, painful experiences. So that's what we're talking about here. And then praise and blame, this is pretty clear. We like it when people say we're wonderful. But when somebody points a finger and says, there's a problem and it's your fault, what do? We go, no, it's not me, but you need to understand that person over there didn't do that, and so it's not my fault. So praise and blame. So we're preoccupied with getting praise and preoccupied with avoiding blame. And then there's fame. There are some people who are preoccupied with wanting to be known. Maybe not known like President Obama is famous, maybe not that kind of fame, but wanting to be known. Some people, they do really good things, but then they're like, did you see that good thing that I did? Right? Look at me, I'm so generous. So there's this sort of lower grade of fame, wanting to be known among the people around you. Okay? So this is also, or then the opposite side of this, and again I've seen 2 things. Obscurity, which is the opposite of being known. It's being unknown. It's the person who you see all the time, but nobody knows their name. Not wanting that. That's one way I've seen this explained. The other way, and it's because there are different translations of this, partly. But the other way is not wanting disgrace. So again, disgrace, you can be famous, but for something negative. This is what often happens in our culture too, isn't it? Somebody gets famous, everyone says, wow, they're great, they're talented, and then there's a rumor. Oh, they cheated on their wife or their husband, or they stole somebody's music in order to get famous or something. And then the tabloid papers and magazines, they jump all over it. The cameras are everywhere, they're chasing them around. And then that person who wanted to be famous, rich and famous, suddenly they want everyone to leave them alone. So we spend a whole lot of time wanting to be known and not wanting to be known for positive things and not wanting to be known for negative things, or even just not wanting to be unknown. And then the last is gain and loss. This is really more about material things. So the first one was about sort of circumstances and experiences. This last one is about material things. We want to accumulate. There's this joke that people say, you know, the person with the most stuff when you die, the person with the most wins. The person with the most money, the most stuff wins. Well, you can't take any of that with you. Right? Of course, we need to have enough. We need to have enough to put a roof over our heads and food on the table. You know, we need enough. But then people also joke about shopping therapy. Have you ever heard this phrase? You're feeling kind of in the blues, you know, work's not going so well. I'll go buy some stuff. That'll make me feel fantastic. And it actually kind of does. I think there's been some studies about when people like accumulate, something about the brain chemistry changes, and you do get this kind of pleasure from it, but it's temporary. It's temporary. Just like with good experiences, just like with praise, just like with fame, it's temporary. And then there's loss. Okay, so once we get all this stuff, we have to protect it. If somebody breaks into your house and they steal your CD collection, you know, some people might get angry about that. How dare they? Those animals. You can easily replace it though, right? It'll take a while, but nobody got hurt, hopefully, right? You know, these kinds of things happen, and we get really angry. When I was a kid, I used to ride my bicycle to the swimming pool, and it was like, I don't know, 25 cents to go to the public swimming school, or 50 cents or something. And then they opened up a water slide next door. But the water slide area didn't have little, what do you call them? Lockers to put your things in, your shoes or whatever. They had just these sort of open wooden shelves, these little boxes along the wall outside. So I put my shoes in there, and I went and played on the water slide and everything. I didn't want to spend the money. I had some extra money. I didn't want to spend the 25 cents for the locker. I wanted to buy candy too. You'd slide for a while, and then you'd buy candy, and then you'd go slide some more. Well, when it was, you know, time to go home, I went back to the little cubbyhole thing, and my shoes were missing. And they were brand new. And then I had to ride my bicycle home with my bare feet. And, you know, bicycle pedals, they have, the metal ones, they have those little spikes on them. That was painful. I was so mad. I was probably, I don't know, 11, 12 years old. But they were just a pair of shoes. I had other shoes at home. But those were my things. How dare someone take them? We waste all kinds of energy getting upset about loss and trying to avoid it. We're concerned with not losing stuff, but we can't take it with us. And most of what we have, if we really think about it, it's useful, but we don't need it. So what's the use in getting all worked up about losing it? Now watch, tomorrow I'll lose something and I'll get really upset. Do what I say, not what I do. Right? No, I do my best. So these are the 8 worldly concerns. And so this is really about attachment and aversion. We're constantly grasping at things, temporary things for pleasure, and trying to avoid situations and things that we don't want. Now, in a sense, this is natural. As physical beings, you know, we touch something hot and we pull our hand away from it. We're trying to avoid physical pain and harm. And who wants to sleep on a bed of bumpy rocks if you can sleep, you know, on a comfortable bed, right? I mean, to a certain extent, this is normal, this is natural, it's not a problem. It's not that we should force ourselves to experience negative, painful things as some sort of discipline. I remember a friend of mine she was German, but she lived in France for a long time at a Buddhist retreat center. And she said that there was a man who came on retreat one time, and he locked himself in his retreat room, and he forced himself to sit in the full lotus position, so his feet all the way up here on both sides, and he would sit for hours and hours and hours until he was literally screaming with pain. And it was freaking the other people out. They're like, what's wrong with this guy? What's wrong with this guy? And they finally found out what he was doing. And so he would be in his room screaming because he was in so much pain, and someone would come knock on the door and say, you really don't have to do that. But my suspicion is that this man had it in his head, no matter how horrible and painful it is, I must sit in the full lotus position. Nonsense. It's not better. Causing ourselves pain is not better. We know this from the Buddha's life story. He lived this life of luxury, and then he went into the forest, and other Indian ascetics of the time, people wandering in the forest and meditating, they were doing all sorts of things to cause extra pain and suffering. And so the Buddha stopped eating. The story is that he was only eating 1 grain of rice a day until he was literally skin and bones, and he could put his hand on his stomach but feel his spine. Have you seen statues or pictures of the Buddha like this? Yeah? Pretty freaky looking, right? Well, the Buddha realized finally, this is no way to enlightenment. This is useless. I'm just destroying my body. So he taught the middle way. Now, the middle way means many different things, but in this sense, the middle way means don't become a hedonist. Don't completely indulge yourself in every pleasure there is available, because that's not a way to happiness. But don't harm yourself in the pursuit of enlightenment either, because that's useless too. So then the Buddha started eating. He had a normal diet, a basically normal diet. For someone of his time, the Buddha ate probably once a day. But most people in India at that time probably didn't even get to eat once a day. So he actually had a good diet for someone of his time. So this is what we do. We chase after happiness in all sorts of crazy ways. That in itself is suffering, because we get something we want and it slips through our fingers. It wears off. The happiness wears off, or we lose it, or it doesn't make us happy even though we thought it would, and we suffer. And then, of course, we experience all kinds of bad things, and we go, ugh, and we run away from it. We try to avoid it. Here was an example I was thinking of before the talk today. So, for this first one, getting positive experiences and avoiding negative ones, who here has ever told a little white lie to avoid something? Maybe having lunch with your mother-in-law, or something like that. You don't want to do something like, oh, no, I really don't. I'm sorry, I don't feel good today. People do that. My sister was, she was working at a place and someone had called in sick, and then he was found out shopping somewhere later with his daughter. Oops. So we do these things to avoid circumstances that we don't want, but sometimes it blows up in our face, and we get a lot of suffering from it. So anyway, this is about attachment and aversion. So we do all of these crazy things in order to find happiness, in order to avoid suffering, and that in itself is suffering. But then we're also planting the seeds for more suffering later through negative behavior, trying to get what we want and avoid what we don't. There's some new movie out now, I think it's called Margin Call. Have you heard of it? It's about the economic crisis that started in 2007, 2008. It's this company, and somebody realizes that they have these investments on their books. It's this investment company, buying and selling stocks and things. And somebody realizes that, oh no, if this one set of stocks or whatever it is loses just 25% of its value, the whole company will collapse. So then they're up all night deciding what to do or something, and then the next day they decide to not tell anyone, not tell any of the other companies what the problem is, and they just sell it all to save their company. But then they tell the people who are selling everything, they say, we need you to do this today. You've come in early this morning, we need you to do this today. You're probably destroying your career, though, to do it. So we're going to give you a couple $1 million if you're successful in destroying your career today. I mean, just think of all the negative karma that they're creating there by lying to people and dumping these bad investments that caused other companies to go under. This kind of stuff happened. I don't know if this particular scenario happened, but this kind of thing happens. It happens all the time, probably. Somebody's selling something, they know it's bad, but they sell it anyway. Maybe some of you have experienced this. You bought something and it's really obvious later on. The salesperson had to know it was junk, but they stuck you with it.
That usually is the stock.
Stock, but things too, physical things too.
They want to, they know it. They lost money, but they want to create, to let people know it's like, it seems like the hype of, something.
Yeah.
So they can sell this right away.
Yeah, they want to get rid of it. So they tell you, it's great. You should buy it. Uh-oh, it's worth nothing. The first time I bought a car, I was 26 years old. I bought a used car. And I asked directly, are there any problems with this car? Twice. The person selling it to me said, no, it's a great car. I took it out for a little drive with him, just a couple of minutes and back, and it seemed fine. It seemed like it ran great. But then I had a long drive home. I took a taxi there, and then I had a long drive home. While I was driving home, the engine started to overheat. So then I took it into the mechanic, and it turned out that the radiator had to be replaced. And he's like, the mechanic said, there's no way these people didn't, the people who sold it to you, there's no way they didn't know this. They lied to me. I swore then I would never buy another used car. The only used car I bought was for my parents. And they never had a problem with it. I knew this car. They'd had it for years. It was the one that I came to UFOP with when I first came here. And within a few months, it started falling apart. But that's not my parents' fault. It was just an old car. So then I leased a new one. I will never, ever buy another used car again. I have horrible karma when it comes to used cars. So this kind of thing happens to us, right? But the people who are doing it are creating negative karma. So we have to be really careful about, the way that we can use this as a tool is just to remember this, be mindful of this teaching. And then as we go about our day-to-day lives, notice when you're attracted to something or when you're feeling like you want to push something away, notice that. And then be really careful, really aware of your motivation in how you respond to that. What am I feeling the impulse to do in order to get what I want and avoid what I don't want? Because there's this little, voice, sort of, it's not even always conscious underneath that's telling us, do this, don't do that. Here's how you can get what you want. Here's how you can avoid what you don't want. Try to listen to that voice, that inner voice that's telling you, do this, don't do that. And then ask yourself, is this impulse to do this or not do that? Is that in accordance with the Buddha's teachings? Is it in line with the Buddha's teachings or not? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Listen to that carefully. And then remember, if I listen to this voice that's telling me to be selfish, to lie, to cheat, or whatever, to any degree, that if I go in that direction, I'm planting the seeds for more suffering in the future. This is how we can use this teaching. So I say here, towards the bottom of this page, a Dharma practitioner recognizes the impermanence of sensory pleasures and does not get angry when suffering comes. A Dharma practitioner gives praise to those who are praiseworthy and accepts blame where blame is due. I had an experience with a boss of mine. I may have told you this story before. This is many years ago, around the time that I first became a monk. He was really angry with me about something that I absolutely knew was not my fault. And at first, I started not really to argue with him, but to say, well, but you need to understand. I was calm. He got so angry. He started cursing at me. He slammed a book or a folder down on his desk. He was yelling. He was really upset. And I just stopped and I said, in whatever way I have been a source of frustration for you, I really am sorry. And I meant it when I said it. I wasn't just saying it. I didn't say it with like an angry tone. Sometimes people say, well, I'm sorry. And you know that they don't mean it because they're angry when they say it, right? I really meant it. And he just was shocked out of his anger. He just stopped and kind of looked at me because people don't usually do that. It's amazing what can happen. It's amazing what can happen when you apply the Dharma. Even in that moment, I saw clearly, okay, I knew this wasn't my fault. He wasn't going to hear it. So I just said, okay, I give up. And for both of us, in that moment, the suffering ended. The Dharma works. So then the last two sentences here. A Dharma practitioner is not concerned with fame and does not behave in disgraceful ways. If we don't chase after fame and we don't behave in disgraceful ways, we cause ourselves and others a whole lot less suffering. And then a Dharma practitioner engages in generosity and remains unattached when loss occurs. So this would be a perfect situation. When loss occurs, for example, completely not worrying about it, that would be the ideal. But the next time you lose something, just catch yourself. If you get angry or really upset or something, you want to blame somebody, catch that and at least avoid acting out. At least avoid yelling at somebody who doesn't deserve it. Avoid taking it out on other people, even if you're feeling bad inside, and just start from there. So this is the kind of person that we want to try and become. No one expects any of us to be that person 5 minutes from now. So this is, again, a tool that we can use and slowly apply it and slowly transform our minds. And then we will cause less suffering for ourselves and less suffering for others, and we will plant the seeds for positive karma for the future. Okay, so that's all I have to say today. So we were going to start with your story about your experience back to this issue.
You said before that people in public school,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, they say that Buddha is down here and
Mm-hmm.
Christian is up here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's true. Because I used to be in Catholic school for my child 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And always in school, the sister, the nun, and the priest always said, Jesus is always from heaven.
Mm.
But Buddha is like human beings. Buddha is not from heaven. Only Jesus is in heaven. And I always disagree, even if I was a little child. They am charged by the priest and the nuns that being stubborn and headstrong, because I don't believe in confession. I don't believe in Saint Mary to be virgin after having Jesus. I don't believe that after death we go either directly to hell or to heaven. I don't believe in that, and they can never convince me to believe in that.
I guess it's less surprising that was a Catholic school, because that was a religious school, but in public school, that's where it's particularly shocking. I suppose if there was a Buddhist school, we would be saying, well, Buddha's great. Maybe we wouldn't be saying Jesus is no good. I think that would be bad. I don't think a Buddhist school should ever do that. But a Buddhist school would be saying, well, Buddha's wonderful. So that's a little bit less shocking, given that it was a parochial school. But thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. But yeah, in the secular world in particular, again, I'll just repeat again that if you run into situations of discrimination, stand up. Stand up. Because silence only allows these problems to continue.
Can I have a question? Is it good when you see something wrong and you stand up to fight for the right? Is that good habit?
Yes, I think that's a good habit. As long as when you stand up and say, this is wrong, this needs to stop, as long as you do that without anger. Because if the people who are trying to do good things go about it in the wrong way, that's not so good.
Because this is my character. Because when I know that I am right, I'm not afraid of anybody. Yeah, it's true.
Fearless. Okay, that's good.
Like today, because it's all deception, otherwise I'm going to bring you a letter from, I wrote to Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. Because one day Arnold Schwarzenegger charged people who receive welfare, Medicare and cash food stamp, that the country, the California is in budget crisis because we pay so much for those people and those people are frauding. So of course it's partly true, but I am disagree. So I wrote to Arnold Schwarzenegger a long letter, and I CC the war supervisor. And in 2008, I said that you said that poor people are frauding, but it's comparing the amount they are frauding, comparing to those who are cheating, like Bernard Madoff. At that time, this big scandal of Bernard Madoff. Comparing with those amounts is nothing. So it doesn't mean that only poor people are fraudulent. Rich people can be even more greedy with the amount that they are cheating is hundreds times more than that. So I wrote to Arnold Schwarzenegger. Long letter. I don't have it here. I still have it.
Fearlessness is a good thing. Fearlessness is a good thing.
Yeah. So I see the work supervisor and they take my side. They are good listeners. They take my side.
Good. That's good. Thank you. So are there questions today? Yes.
About the eight worldly concern. And look at the pleasure and suffering and pride and blame and fragment of obscurity and the gain and loss. I think that's the emptiness of the things. If we think about emptiness of the eight worldly concern, that's the attitude. Is that change or what?
Oh yes, so looking at these eight worldly concerns with an attitude of emptiness, that's definitely a way to go about it. I was talking about impermanence a little bit in this teaching day, but definitely these things are empty of any real ability. This would be a good way to think of it. These things are empty of any real ability. That is the positive ones on the left and the negative, and avoiding the negative ones on the right. That is empty of any ability to give us enlightenment, real, lasting, perfect happiness, and a complete end to suffering. So yes, they're empty. Yes, absolutely. Other questions? Yes.
You know, a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned how the Buddha would approach things like, if he got curry rice, he would have something, and he said, he saw a sunset, his reaction would be something, and he said, he wouldn't say, curry rice, or sunset. So what would be the proper reaction to have towards what things in general like that, if you want to become totally enlightened?
Well, I'm sure the Buddha, when he was in his physical body, as the historical Buddha Shakyamuni, there were tastes that were pleasurable and tastes that were not. And the Buddha could look at a sunset and know that it was beautiful. But what a Buddha would not do is be attached to it. That's what a Buddha would not do. So if you burned a Buddha, the Buddha would still feel pain. But it's the layers of mental activity that we put on top of those experiences that a Buddha doesn't do. So if a Buddha got burned, he wouldn't, jump up off of his meditation seat and say, "You bleep, bleep, bleep. How did you do that? I'm going to beat you up and knock your teeth out." A Buddha wouldn't do that. Okay, this is kind of an extreme reaction. So Buddhas can still experience pleasure, and they can see, they understand comfort and pain and all of that. But it's the attachment that they don't have. So that's what we need to work on. So if we see a beautiful sunset and then we go, but I don't want to leave this place ever, ever, ever. And then later on we're like, I just want to go back and be in that sunset. I don't want to be where I am right now. That's what a Buddha would not do. So it's the attachment that we need to try and cut out. So it's fine to look at a sunset and say, this is wonderful. But when you turn your back to walk away from the sunset, completely walk away. Does that make sense? Yes. That's a good question, though. Thank you. Yes?
I think during the summertime, the retreat summer here at our temple, and I happened to see a couple of pictures that the new bhikkhu and bhikkhuni were ordained.
Mm-hmm. The new ordination.
Mm-hmm. And they got a ceremony that kind of had the incense burning on their head.
Yes.
What's the purpose for doing it? Because I saw one of the nuns, she was in pain, and I just want to say something. I just could. I can see it as two of the monks very calm, but then one of them is really, she tried to hold on herself so hard that I just couldn't handle it, but I just wonder what the purpose was.
Okay.
I see not all the monks or nuns had it, some.
Yeah. I don't, interestingly. I don't have any of these burn marks. So the question was about when monks and nuns were ordained, the burn marks, the burning of incense on the head. Some traditions do it on the arm. I think in Korea they do it on the arm. This is East Asian Buddhist tradition. It does not come from the time of the Buddha. It probably started in China and then spread to Korea and to Vietnam. They don't do it in Japan anymore, to my knowledge. I've never seen a Japanese Buddhist priest with these burn marks on them. And I'm not sure, I'm blanking right now, is that from the Bhikshu Bhikshuni ordination ceremony, or is that for the Bodhisattva vows for monks and nuns? The Bhikshu Bhikshuni ordination, okay. I'm not sure why they do it, actually. There are probably different explanations in different traditions. I'll ask to get a clear answer to see why the Vietnamese monks and nuns do it at least, and I'll ask some of the other monastics at school. But I never saw the purpose in destroying, and if you burn yourself like that, you're actually putting yourself at greater risk for skin cancer. That's what I've been told, so I've never done it. I'm not sure why they do that.
I asked one of the nuns who were working that day, and she gave me just, because I asked what's the name of the ceremony, and she said that to honor the Buddha. And I thought, well, why? Why are you burning yourself? Why are you,
hurting yourself? Right.
By doing it that way.
I don't understand it either. But I'll ask Most Venerable Vinli what the specific purpose is of burning the body. One of them, the two young Vietnamese Australian monks, Bao Tuệ, the taller one, I saw him later in weeks following that, and he, did the 3 burn marks, and one of them got swollen and black, and it just looked really, really bad. Yeah, I don't do it. I don't recommend it personally, but it's a tradition in East Asian Buddhism. Some parts of East Asian Buddhism.
That is for tradition.
Yeah, it's tradition.
Become the Đại Đức,
Yeah.
Star have to do it.
Yeah, I think it's a way of showing that you're serious about taking the ordination. You're willing to go through this pain to do the ordination. For me, when I did my Bhikshu ordination here at the temple, I was even a little bit heavier than I am now, and so sitting on my legs like this was extremely painful. For some reason, I used to sit like this all the time when I was a kid. For hours, I would just sit and watch television, no problem. But then I was skinny as this table leg here. So for whatever reason, I couldn't sit like this for a long time, probably because I had gained too much weight. But I had to sit like this through part of the ceremony. My whole body was shaking. I was in so much pain. I was sweating because of the pain. It wasn't well, it was a little warm that day too. It was the Buddha's birthday, the same day as the Buddha's birthday celebration. And I was sitting right about here, facing that direction. My whole body was shaking from the pain, and I thought, I'm not going to make it. And then they said, okay, stand up. And I was like, that was painful enough. I didn't need to burn my body to do some sort of physical penance. But yeah, it's not a practice that I would do personally.
I think that's the way it's very hard. The body is hurt. But you just do like this is forever. Doesn't just like this doesn't hurt at all. But that kind is
That's how I was just sitting.
Not longer.
With my toes pointed back. Yeah.
Not longer.
Yeah. There's another temple that I go to sometimes down in Anaheim, and we're doing a long prayer. It's sort of like the long refuge prayer we do at the beginning of our services. But when we go down and we bow, and then we have to sit like this on our toes, like this for a while where we're chanting, and some lines of the chant are rather long and it goes pretty slow. And so finally, during a retreat, we were doing this a lot, and my feet just hurt all the time. And so finally I asked the abbot, I said, can we please, when we're doing the prayer, can we sit like this and then just go like this when we have to stand up? And he said, oh yeah, sure, no problem. We all went, oh, thank you. So, yeah. Anyway.
That is the way practice too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the way that's when it's very hard.
Yeah.
You have to practice.
We did 108 bows on this weekend retreat. This was just the retreat that I went to a few weeks ago. And I thought, 108 bows, no problem, because I've done it here before. And a few years ago, when I first became a monk, I went into retreat and was doing the Tibetan-style prostrations. I averaged 1,000 a day, which by Tibetan standards that's nothing. So don't be impressed with that. But 1,000 a day, I can do 108. Because here at the temple, when we're doing them, we're able to use our hands a little bit more. I see the way the other monks are bowing. So when they go down, they don't go down on their knees and then down and then up and then only use their legs to stand. We push ourselves a little bit. The same thing with the Tibetan prostrations. A lot of it is upper body strength. So you're distributing the stress over your whole body, and you're also not landing on your knees, especially with the Tibetan ones. You're not landing on your knees. You're not supposed to put your knees down first in the Tibetan tradition. So, yeah, protect your knees. Well, we had a pad at this temple, but when we were doing the bowing, we would stand up and then go straight down, only using our legs on our knees, and then put our hands down and bow, and then come back up, and then stand straight up using only our legs. We couldn't use our hands at all. I almost didn't make it. The other 3 people in this doing this practice with me, one is in the military and does physical training almost every day. Another one is a tennis instructor, and the other one's a yoga teacher. I'm really not in that good a shape. But I was the one keeping rhythm, so they were like standing up while I was still, I was using this bamboo rhythm keeping thing like a cane by the end to push myself up. I thought my back was going to give out. It wasn't so much my legs, it was my back was the problem. I need to get into shape. Anyway, okay. So are there any more questions? No? Okay, let's do meditation.